Hey guys, so I posted a tier list of my favorite and least favorite Sonic games over in a Facebook group ranked from S to F, S being the highest, F being the lowest. And it kinda got a lot of traction with over 200 reactions and over 400 comments. There were a lot of people who agreed with it and a lot of people who disagreed with it. And it really had me thinking just how diverse people's tastes are when it comes to the Sonic games. I got into some great debates with fellow fans over this tier list and thought it might be fun to explain my reasoning for each game's ranking in a video. Especially with people wondering why Sonic 06, the supposedly worst Sonic game in existence, is almost S tier, which is what we're going to take a look at first, S tier. So Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are in S tier because they're my favorite Sonic games of all time. While I like Sonic Adventure 2 just a tad more for its story, the first Sonic Adventure game holds up equally in terms of gameplay and overall story. The Adventure games have the best stories in all the Sonic games in my opinion, and the gameplay feels incredibly defined, especially the control you have over each character. The physics feel pretty much perfect and consistent, which makes for an enjoyable playthrough every time. Also, you can play as other characters. Each character feels relevant to the story of these games, and their unique playstyles give the game this blend of variety, but doesn't feel so vastly different that it takes you out of the immersion. However, Big the Cat in Sonic Adventure is subject for debate. I could make a 2-hour-long video talking about why I think the Sonic Adventure series are the best Sonic games to date, but for now, you'll have to settle with this lesser, ultra-summarized basic explanation instead. Sonic Generations hits S tier primarily because of the gameplay. I didn't care for the story of that game, but it's the rare time that I felt like story didn't matter in a Sonic game, since it was only there to serve as an explanation to have modern Sonic and classic Sonic in the same game together. Sonic Generations felt like the greatest hits of the Sonic series, an excuse to reimagine older Sonic levels and bosses. Their selection with each level and boss was pretty great, but the fact that modders have created their own reimagined stages from previous Sonic titles makes this game all the more better. Not to mention, this felt like a redefined version of Sonic Unleashed in terms of gameplay. I loved all of modern Sonic stages, and even classic Sonic was very fun to play as in that game. Both characters offer that same feeling of having control of your character like the adventure games, but obviously altered to fit the new playstyles of this game. The gameplay, level design, level selection, boss fights, and amount of content in the game made this feel like a complete Sonic package. And again, it's one of the rare times that story didn't feel necessary in a Sonic game. Fighting Shadow, Silver, and Metal Sonic in all new reimagined boss fights is all I've ever wanted in a modern Sonic game, and this game delivers exactly that. Sonic Mania should be a given as to why it's S tier. It's literally a redefined version of the classic 2D games, which I love as well. It feels smooth, there are multiple playable characters, there's a story, awesome special stages, and it feels like the perfect classic 2D Sonic game. My only critique with the game is that I wish it had more all-new original levels. Though I really enjoyed the new twists and turns on older stages, and in some cases, it made older levels feel like brand new ones with the fun gimmicks it introduced. Because the game is so creative and you get to play Puya Puya with Eggman in Chemical Plant Zone, this game is ranked S. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, while are technically separate games on this list, I'm treating them as one full game. It's easily the biggest 2D Sonic game with the most amount of variety and story the classic 2D games have to offer. Each character has their own story and unique moments within their playthrough. The game is packed with content and a basic enough story that's easy to follow, but isn't intrusive for those who just want to play action-packed stages at high speeds. It's such a classic game that I really think defines Sonic's origin. Next, we visit A tier. The first game in A tier is Sonic 06. Why the hell Sonic 06 is in A tier is probably what your first question was when you clicked on this video. Well, the answer is simple and kinda complicated, but I'll summarize it as best as possible. Sonic 06 is a Sonic game that's not accessible for everyone. In short, Sonic 06 feels like a rugged version of the Sonic Adventure games, and because of the glitches and bugs, I consider it to be the Dark Souls of the Sonic Adventure series for its unintentional and unfair difficulty. Now, people's biggest issues with the game are its glitches, and the fact that Sonic shares a romantic relationship with a whole-ass human being. But to me, those are piss-poor excuses. I played and beat this entire game as an 11-year-old in the 6th grade. The only part I really struggled with was the ending portion when you play as all the characters trying to find the 7 Chaos Emeralds in order to save Sonic. While I encountered glitches and rough edges in the game, my experience was actually quite enjoyable. I learned how to play the game around the glitches and bugs, and not like an all-out Sonic Adventure remake. The problem is, as fortunate as it is, you have to play the game differently than what you'd think and expect. If you go in thinking it's going to be a polished Sonic Adventure game, you're going to be disappointed and probably hate the game. But once you master how this game works on an unfinished, unpolished level, you can actually breeze through the game and find some enjoyability out of it. I compare it to Dark Souls because it's a difficult game that isn't accessible to casual gamers. It has a playstyle that doesn't appeal to a lot of people because of its bugs. However, it's not unplayable as many claim. Sonic 06 is similar in that its rough gameplay isn't for everyone, but like Dark Souls, there is a learning curve to be able to play the game properly. You have to play by its rules and not the rules you think it should be played by. I dislike Dark Souls because it's a hard piece of shit of a game, and I can see how people can feel this way about Sonic 06. It honestly almost ranks S tier because it has all the things the Sonic Adventure series had. Multiple playable characters, hub worlds, mini missions, decent levels, pretty visuals, and a story you can sorta give a shit about. While the story is less impressive in this game, it still does a few things right, at least way better than any recent modern Sonic games. Again, I can go into an hour-long video defending and explaining Sonic 06, but that's my ultra super short version of it. Next are the Sonic Advanced and Sonic Rush games. These all felt like the classic games with a modern twist, and I really like that. They progressively got better, but in my opinion, none of them were worse or better than the others. I did like the first Sonic Rush slightly over the second one though. Each Sonic Advance game had its own unique thing, and then the sequel improved it or replaced it with something else entirely. Definitely all A tier in my book. Sonic Chronicles is another one that I debate with a bit. It's a Sonic RPG. It's a game that won't appeal to some players, especially if you're a hardcore action platformer kind of person. Me, I enjoy my RPGs and JRPGs, so this was an awesome spin on the series. Of course, because it's radically different, a lot of people weren't fans. But I love RPGs, so to see Sonic as an RPG really made me happy. Plus there was brand new lore that mostly fit with the Sonic games before Sonic 06, which I'm a bit of a sucker for. Personally, I'd love to see a sequel to this game, or an entire Sonic Chronicles series, as I'm sure there are others who would want it as well. Sonic and the Black Knight was also a little bit of a different game in that Sonic and his friends wield swords. It was a different take on Sonic, but being that it's considered a spin-off in the Sonic book series, I actually really enjoyed it. My experience with the game was actually pretty good. It had fluid responsive controls, I enjoyed the story, and I loved fighting the other Sonic characters in sword duels, which is easily my favorite part of the game. It improved upon the many control problems Sonic and the Secret Rings had, which a lot of people were happy with. I also think swordplay is a lot more fitting than guns in the Sonic universe, and again, the fact that the game was a spin-off made me suspend my Sonic has to be a fast action platformer mindset, though I've always been open to change when it comes to Sonic as long as it feels right for the series, and to me, this game felt right at home as a spin-off Sonic game. Sonic 1 is an A tier and not S tier because I never actually got past Labyrinth Zone. Even as an adult, I had to level skip to Starlight Zone.
Yeah, I just admitted that.
People's criticism with the game is that it goes from fast-paced in Green Hill Zone to slow-paced in Marble Zone, but I never really had a problem with that. I've also always preferred this art style of Sonic that you see in Sonic 1 and Sonic CD. The more stylized cartoon version of Sonic in Sonic 2 and 3 kind of felt a little bit off for me. Something about the art style of this game really captivates me over the other ones. Sonic 2 borders on S tier and A tier for me because of my personal history with it. I believe it was my first Sonic game I ever beat, and I have very fond memories of playing it with my dad growing up. I definitely cherish it, even if I'm not a fan of its art style. It's absolutely a worthy sequel to the first game. Sonic Unleashed is another game that almost makes S tier like Sonic 06, but a few things bring it down for me. First off, I'm a fan of both the daytime and nighttime stages. I actually like the Werehog, but the fact that you spend more time playing as the Werehog than breezing through the daytime stages, and the fact that the story was very average, just drops it down to A tier for me. Honestly, the level design is some of the best I've ever seen in a Sonic game. The game feels incredibly detailed and polished, and the world is so beautiful to explore in the day and at night. It has a tone and feel unlike any other Sonic game, and that even includes the Wii and PS2 versions as well. Both lower end versions of the game for the older systems still feel polished and fun for the respective consoles. There's so much to enjoy in Sonic Unleashed, and it's right at the border of being nearly perfect. Sonic Heroes is another game I really enjoy. The team play elements were different, yet a fitting feature for the Sonic series. Switching between 3 different characters on the fly to problem solve and to get through the game's variety of different challenges felt actually very satisfying. It was also a game that I really enjoyed the plot for. The return of Metal Sonic was a fun idea to watch unfold. Each team also had their own unique story, which seems to be a running concept in the Sonic games, and it was actually played out well here. What brings it from S to A though is some of the gameplay elements. For some reason, the game feels very slidey and a little less polished. It doesn't have the same finesse and control the adventure games had to offer, and being that it came after those games made it a tad disappointing. But by no means is it a bad game. Sonic CD is a bit of a hit or miss. As I mentioned previously, I love the art style of Sonic 1, and this is a return to that art style. While the levels aren't as pretty and cohesive as Sonic 1, the tone and feel of Sonic CD brings all that back from Sonic 1 and continues it. The story as a kid really pulled me in, especially the time traveling aspect of it. It's a game that's built around exploration and less of breezing through the levels. In fact, you can beat most of Sonic CD's levels in under 3 minutes, and this includes each act for each zone as well. For a lot of people, this game is like if you took everything you disliked about Sonic 1 and put it into the game. But for me, everything people disliked about Sonic 1, I actually liked, except for Labyrinth Zone.
Fuck that zone.
But at least the music was on point. Next, we take a look at B tier. Honestly, Sonic Battle could have been an A tier, but my experience with the game seems to have been a little bit different than most people. I loved everything about Sonic Battle, from the concept to the characters to the story to the RPG elements, but the actual gameplay portion of it felt kinda off for me. I always experienced bad hit detection when I played, which made it kinda less fun for me, combined with being relatively mediocre at fighting games. But the idea of a Sonic fighting game enticed me. I just wish my initial experience with it was a bit better. Sonic R is another Sonic 06 case in that there's a learning curve to the gameplay. It's not exactly the smoothest racing game out there, but once you master the controls, or at least understand how they work, your experience with the game will be a bit better. I wish there were more stages in the game though. There's only about 5 levels, and it's pretty easy to unlock all the bonus characters. I enjoyed Sonic R, especially the music. It's a very nostalgic 90s thing for me, like Sonic CD. I just wish there was a bit more to it. Sonic and the Secret Rings is a game I wish I liked more, but the controls and handling of the game bring it down a bit. It's got great ideas, and I love the leveling system. You can feel the creativity and inspiration from the developers in this game, but it's pretty difficult to play. I would love to see a re-release of this game that has controller support and refines the gameplay a bit, since I think it's a very underrated game in terms of everything else outside of its poor controls. Sonic Riders was an enjoyable game for me. I'm not the biggest fan of racers, but I was always into skateboarding and snowboarding growing up, and to add that into my favorite mascot of all time was a dream come true. I enjoyed my time with Sonic Riders, except that the game eventually got a little bit repetitive and there wasn't much replay value in my eyes. Then again, I haven't played it in a very long time, so it has potential of bumping up, since I don't remember it all too much. Next, we arrive at C tier. First game is Shadow the Hedgehog. Not much to say here. It had some cool ideas, but I'm sure it used the same slippery engine as Sonic Heroes, and the whole Hedgehog using guns thing didn't really appeal to me. I did like the branching paths idea, but I disliked having to play through the game like 10 times to get the true ending. Either way, it was very ambitious with all the multiple endings and characters you encountered during Shadow's adventure. Next is Sonic Spinball. Honestly, this needs to be bumped down to D. It's another Sonic game that isn't accessible for everyone, and you either love it or you strongly dislike it. There isn't really an in-between. This game was extremely difficult for me, and I never got past the first level. I did love the dark and dingy atmosphere it had, but outside of that, the whole gameplay being pinball just didn't do it well for me. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity was like the hard version of Sonic Riders. To me, it didn't do as well as the original as far as capturing that initial spark and enjoyment the first game had. It's a sequel, I guess. Now we get to the fun stuff in Tier D. Sonic Forces was a game I really wanted to like. The trailer, the setup, the return of a more serious story in a Sonic game, one that finally felt story focused with stakes, threats, and Sonic's friends returning to the foreground again, and then this happened. This game was such a letdown in every way. The gameplay was awful, it felt like you had no control over Sonic, and that everything was automated and stiff. It honestly felt like a game that could have been on the Wii. The new villain Infinite was such a letdown as well. The teases of fighting Sonic's old enemies again as boss fights kicked it over the edge for me. I was really looking forward to some creative epic boss fights against Sonic's old foes, but instead we got to fight a giant metal Sonic. A giant fucking metal Sonic. Okay, I nearly hate this game. The only thing keeping it out of F tier is the fact that it was an attempt at bringing Sonic back to where Sonic fans wanted the series to go after the adventure games. The original character was a cool idea, but it also felt like a cheap gimmick. Thinking about what this game could have been just makes me depressed. Again, I have plenty to say about this game, but I should probably leave that to a separate video on its own. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric isn't an F tier because I did like the idea of a Sonic beat 'em up. Even if the game got repetitive, it was an interesting playthrough with some interesting ideas. An open world Sonic game with a focus on combat and some speed and platforming. I don't think this game is as bad as everyone says, but it doesn't mean it's a great game either. I just don't think it's as horrible as people make it out to be. In fact, I'd trade this game for Sonic Spinball so that it's in C tier and Sonic Spinball is in D tier. Finally, we hit the bottom of the can, F. Sonic Lost World did not appeal to me whatsoever. I hated the story, the gameplay didn't feel fun, the villains were the worst ones to date, and I didn't really like this game at all. And that's it. That's all I gotta say. Finally, we have my most hated Sonic game of all time, and it should be below F tier, and why people enjoy this game is so much beyond me. Sonic Colors is the worst Sonic game I have ever played. Everything about it is so average and bad. It honestly just should have been a mobile spin-off. And it feels insulting to call it a modern, canon Sonic game. Just like Sonic Forces, it's a step backwards in every single way. How do you go from a game like Sonic Generations to a game like Sonic Forces? Well, how do you go from a game like Sonic Unleashed to a game like Sonic Colors? Sonic Unleashed for the Wii and PS2 blow this disgrace of a Wii game out of the water by a long shot. It's a blocky, uninspired, non-creative video game. It's so painstakingly average that it makes Sonic Boom look like a masterpiece. Sonic Colors does nothing new and exciting and introduces the worst mechanic I have ever seen in a Sonic game, the Wisps. And for some reason Sega wants to bank on them rather than their beloved Chow, and it makes no sense to me. I don't understand the appeal of this game. The story is awful, the gameplay is below average, and while it has some pretty visuals, 90% of the game is in 2D, and each platforming section consists of generic blocks and shapes. It's not fun. But again, that's just the short version without my detailed explanation on why I hate Sonic Colors. I just think it's incredibly overrated and does not deserve all the praise that it gets. But we can't leave on a negative note. One game that I forgot to put on this list is Sonic Shuffle, which I think is one of the most underrated Sonic games of all time. It's not S tier worthy, but I think it's mid-grade A tier. And while I'm probably saying that for nostalgia purposes, I know I had a blast playing it with my friends growing up, and I know I never got bored playing it. So yeah, that has been my Sonic tier list, and I know there are other games I'm missing, but that was the generic template I found online that was free. I'd love to one day dive more into detail about why I like or dislike a Sonic game. If you're interested in a video like that, let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I know that you guys are interested in this type of video. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.